The thing that broke me down the most wasn't the friends I lost in combat, it was the friends we kept losing after. It takes its toll.
What made you join the military?
I made a lot of bad choices when I was in high school, and I needed something that would give me an opportunity and a chance.
When I was a kid, there was a Marine that lived around the corner from me, and he stood tall and erect. He was just so proud. From that day on, I knew I wanted to be a Marine.
I personally would not recommend my own children enlist in the military. I just feel like there's a lot of variables that could go wrong, and I'm not entirely confident that the government would take care of them post-service.
Some unfair judgments that I've really seen is in the civilian sector. When you come out, there's a lot of things that you're taught in the military within your communication that could be viewed as aggressive.
A lot of people assume that you're crazy or that you have PTSD, that there's something wrong with you.
Some sort of ticking time bomb that walks around. That's just not the case, or that we're all bloodthirsty savages. We're not against anybody. We're not for anybody. We are truly of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Danny Sharp, Army, 8 years.
I'm Dave. I'm a retired Marine from about 4 or 5 decades ago. Maybe you can't tell by looking at me. I was in the Marine Corps for 20 years, and I worked for the VA afterwards and a couple of other jobs, and here I am.
My name is Mahadi, and I was in the U.S. Army for 4 years.
My name is Peter. I've been in the U.S. Army, active duty and the reserves for 22 years.
What's up, fellas? How are we? My name's Elliot. I served in the Marine Corps for 4 years.
The first prompt is, I enlisted at 18 years old. Come forward if that's true for you.
I enlisted at 18 because, honestly, college really wasn't an option for me. I wasn't exactly the most intelligent high school student. I failed numerous classes. I knew that I wanted to be a Marine from a young age. So as soon as I graduated high school, literally 5 days after I graduated high school, I was on the yellow footprints in boot camp.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I left 2 weeks after I graduated high school. But I had a less than normal childhood, we'll say, so the military was a way that it would offer me a chance to have a stable adult life once I progressed after the military too.
I was looking to get away. I grew up here in the South Bay area, had a fairly comfortable life, graduated at 17, but they picked me up from my 18th birthday party, and my first day of being 18 was spent at Fort Leonard Wood in processing.
Wow.
At basic, so.
That sucks.
Yeah, one hell of an 18th birthday present, welcome to boot, we're shaving your head.
So my story is actually a little different. I enlisted with the Navy when I was 17, and then I failed out of high school. The Marine Corps took me as far as MCRD, and then they found a heart murmur, and I got sent home. I pissed away a year of my life making awful choices, and one day woke up and walked downstairs where my father was waiting in the dining room, and I said, if I don't join the Army or the Air Force, I am going to end up face down in a ditch probably in a couple of weeks because I have nothing. And a couple of weeks later, I raised my right hand and they gave me some waivers and I joined. And I was 19 when I enlisted and I turned 20 in basic training.
Wow.
Oh.
I think the beginning of my military was like yours. I had gotten kicked out of high school or dropped from the academic rolls because of not passing 3 academic subjects, which they told us. And so now I'm in Philadelphia, walking the streets by myself, no friends. And I went down to the recruiter, and he said, you got to get your parents' consent because you're only 17. He gave me the paperwork, so I took it home, and my father signed right away. And so I was off to the Marine Corps at 17. And I got out, and I stayed out for a little over a year, and I went back again, and I did 3 more years, and I got out again. I must not have been happy. Maybe I was confused. I came back in after that.
Well, see, that's more the point. You kept coming back for more.
There's something special about being a part of an organization where we all went through the same crucibles, you guys literally.
Right, yeah.
And instantly have a bond with them that we just don't have with other people.
My military experience has affected my mental health.
Coming out of the military, regardless of the experience you've been through, I mean, I don't know who else has been operated within combat zones, but the thing that people don't realize is they look at PTSD, they look at the trauma that we face and that we see in those types of environments, but they don't understand the emotional take that you go through as you just basically transition out of the military, and you lose a real part of yourself, that family, that connection.
Being that you're still in,
Yeah.
how do you adapt to having to deal with mental illness while still being in the military now?
When I answered this question of I agree with the military service has affected my mental health, I mean that in both a positive and a negative way. The sudden absence of regimentation when I left active duty and joined the reserves was so stark and so difficult for me to deal with that I quite literally fell apart. I lost my father in 2009, had a deployment immediately afterwards. The crazy thing is that the deployment's what saved me. Now, there's a positive side to this.
Of course.
I don't feel at any point that it's completely hopeless. There's always a fight that can be won.
Yeah, the thing that honestly has gotten me the most has been, I didn't realize what I experienced in Iraq would have such a powerful impact on my life. One of the things that I went through was my CO got killed in Iraq, and I unfortunately was not on that patrol, so I think about it all the time. And every Memorial Day, I think about it. Every Veterans Day, I think about it. And I'm thinking about my situation, like, I can't believe that only one deployment did all this to me. I came home with PTSD, anxiety, depression, hyper-awareness. It's just a whole laundry list of issues. And I was able to find my calling in the music industry. And now I'm able to take the platform that I've been given and inspire other people.
It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual strength and endurance that gets us through. I mean, you're not alone. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've got survivor's guilt as well. But you know what got me the most? The thing that broke me down the most wasn't the friends I lost in combat, it was the friends we kept losing after. It takes its toll.
First of all, I consider myself very fortunate that because of my service, I didn't experience any kind of significant mental health challenges. But because of my job, I saw a lot of people that did, whether they're coming back from deployment and just messed up by the hell of war, or even the issues that we have stateside when we have suicide, murders, sexual assault, things like that. They're all affecting the mental health of the force currently.
I find that I have been extremely concerned and helpful for veterans that I know are running that Veterans Administration gauntlet to benefits. I don't know if I was affected, my mental health was affected because I have this really desire to want to help guys and women through this VA gauntlet that they have to go through, which is a maze to them.
You know, we have a lot of veterans, like our culture in the military is like, hey, just tough it out.
Suck it up.
Suck it
Suck
up,
it out,
you
right.
know.
Yeah.
Take
that
a
we-
knee, drink water, face out,
Yeah.
full security.
That we kind of carry that into the civilian world, and now, you know, we're trying to shift the culture where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
ask for help. You know, it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help, you know.
I have felt sympathy for those we've fought.
Our business that we have had, the titles that we have held, have been a business of trying to prevent the loss of life by causing the loss of life. It is a difficult choice to make, to pull the trigger. It's the hardest trigger pull that you'll ever feel in your entire life, is to pull that trigger with someone on the other end. I could not do my job as a leader in today's Army if I was not able to see the person on the other end of my rifle as a human being. We try to train each and every soldier, Marine, Airman, and Sailor, that a target is only a silhouette, to take away that shock value, to take away that burden of responsibility of what you're about to do. But the inability to sympathize with another human being would make our job impossible. If someone is hurt, if someone is wounded, if someone is injured, if someone is sick, if someone needs to give birth, and they are not wearing an American flag, we will still render that because we have to have that sympathy, we have to have that empathy, or we can't continue. We just can't.
Our ethics and our humanity are the only things that really keep us intact when we're there and allow us to come back into the civilian sector and still be human beings. We're dealing with anxiety, we're dealing with depression. But for the first time that I've seen, you have men and women that have the capacity and compassion for themselves to reach out for help, to talk about these events, to bring awareness.
Yeah, Elliot, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You lost your CO,
Yeah.
and that hurts. I lost some friends. When they took him from you, what was the initial response? Did you feel the way that I felt, that hate and that rage?
Immediately when we got the call on the radio about the IED that exploded under his Humvee and killed him, I wanted to grab my rifle and run to where they were and just unload. That anger sat in me for a while. Looking back now, I'm able to understand more about maybe why they did what they did. Culture, society, and I understand that that is what was the driving force behind what they were doing.
I think we're all privileged to live in the United States, and we have a broader view of how the world works around us. They may not. And their idea of good is much different from our idea of good.
I remember being in Iraq, going on foot patrols, and I would have sympathy for the civilians, the citizens of Iraq, of Ramadi, because they would ask us for basic things like water, soccer balls, you know, things that we take advantage of every single day here. And I was sitting there walking around with my rifle on patrol thinking, these people don't have these basic necessities. They can't get food, they can't get water, the kids don't have toys to play with. That must suck.
And to think if this was my country, if I'm in Los Angeles, California, and a foreign force invades, what am I going to do? What would I do? And you're damn right that I would probably be on the other end of that. I would be the terrorist. I would be the insurgent trying to protect my homeland and my way of life because this is how I grew up. And I don't know who these people are, and they're trying to impose their will on me, and I don't want it.
Right.
You can at least sympathize with the lives that are upended because of this conflict.
Of course.
You know, when we talk about the civilians that have to deal with this, you know, especially in the situation that you talked about where they, you know, don't have what we have. You know, like I immigrated from a country where refrigeration was a luxury.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's more involved than just, you know, the A side and B side.
Oh yeah.
Oh, of course.
Drone warfare scares me.
Robert E. Lee, who was a Confederate general during the Civil War, said, "It is good that war is terrible, lest we become accustomed to it." I get it. I know. I quoted a Confederate general. The whole of the internet is going to explode now. But he has an excellent point. If we do not experience the terrors of war, it will be war without end because there is nothing to lose. Drone warfare terrifies me because it separates the human experience of war from the act of killing. Look at the only people who feel the experience are the drone warfare operators, and they are going through mental health crisis left, right, and center because they stare at the people's faces and those people have no idea it's coming, none whatsoever. If we lose empathy for the results of war, we are doomed to repeat it over and over and over and over and over again, and what do we do when it's on us?
With the intelligence like it is, it's so imprecise that if you take a 5-digit grid coordinates and 5 digits the other way, if one digit is wrong, you miss the target. And so if the intelligence is off by the most minor degree, you're going to miss the target. And then, you know, where do the munitions end up? Where do they land? You know, and a big I'm sorry when we get around to it 6 months later. So It's too flaky and shaky.
They made the controllers for some of our automated weapons. They turned them into Xbox-style controllers because the argument is, oh, well, because we understand Xbox controllers. This generation understands this style of controllers, and it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier and easier to pull the trigger and think that there's no consequence.
Look, I'm sorry, I can't even wait till I sit down. I understand everything you're both saying about how technology can affect what can happen in the world. Precision strikes all over, but to sit there and take, in my opinion, a naive perspective in saying that drone technology is going to have such a profound effect when it comes to the impact of how we conduct the business of war, because it is a business at the end of the day. If it can prevent the loss of life, precise strikes to limit the loss of our brothers and sisters' lives, I am 100% for it. The humanity of war, of you taking a life and me seeing that, and the emotional impact of the rest of the people in that room, versus one person sitting on a computer who we can keep in a safe environment and provide mental health and care for, where's the real downside? We are still taking life, regardless. But it's being done in a precise manner that is actually preventing the loss of our soldiers' lives.
I only disagreed because I'm more in the middle, honestly. I've seen the positive and the negative that can come out of drones. Like you said, you can minimize the loss of life by not having a pilot up there. But I completely agree with what you were saying, where it's becoming almost like a video game. So I'm kind of in the middle, honestly.
But what's the difference from you pushing that button or sitting up there with a Mark 19 raining down on a village 40 millimeter grenades, raining down hellfire?
There's a psychological difference between you doing it and seeing it in person on the ground versus doing it from behind or in a room from a drone. I think like I said, I'd have to do a lot more research and figure out the specifics, but I think there's a psychological difference between those two types of kills.
Okay, but what you're saying there is you would rather inflict more harm and mental anguish on the soldier by physically being there, by pulling that trigger, by letting that Mark 19 40 millimeter grenade go,
right,
and rip and watch the destruction they're doing and put them
right
into anxiety and depression and PTSD versus it being a video game that they can turn off and begin to function as a normal human being and not have that long-term damage.
But the thing you're forgetting is it's not a video game. Those are real people that they just killed with that drone. So the psychological effects might be the exact same.
They could be. And no, I'm very well aware that those are real people. I've walked in those deserts. I've walked down those streets. I know exactly what you're talking about. If you're telling me that with your experience and your PTSD, if you couldn't take that away and put yourself in a space to be able to have gone through that experience and not dealt with the fallout and the repercussion, the fear, you wouldn't want that?
If I am fighting an enemy that I have no connection to, and they are fighting an enemy that they have no connection to, what is the incentive to stop?
The answer is very clear: mutual self-destruction. Nuclear technology has been around for years. How many countries in the world have access to nuclear technology right now?
Plenty.
Plenty. Why hasn't one nuke been fired?
They have been. The Pakistani-Indian border, they've been throwing them at each other left and right.
Left and right, yes, but on a global scale, realistically, why haven't any of the superpowers launched? Why hasn't China?
I mean, your point is solid, mutually assured destruction, but the argument still stands. Why is North Korea continually trying to find a way to get a missile to our shores, to load it with a payload? Because as soon as they can do it from over there, they will. At what point does it stop? At what point do we have people who are not wearing a uniform, who are in control of the trigger, saying, you know what, this group of people today, boop.
You don't think there's political and economic fallout of that? That's going to hit on a deeper scale. I mean, realistically, you're talking about hundreds of people being taken out.
That's
you
any
got
foreign
one-off kill
intervention.
situations that are happening.
That's any foreign intervention. I think the cost of dissonance is actually greater on the political aspect of this. If a politician can wage war without sending their troops, and I agree with you, I care about the health and well-being of our troops.
Oh,
I agree with that
politics involved.
wholeheartedly. That part of
Yes.
the argument is not in question.
Yeah, but if they're so easily able to wage war because of drone technology, then we're again separating ourselves from the human cost of it.
The military receives too much funding.
I can already sense the answers with the people that don't agree with me. We spend a drastic amount of money on our Department of Defense. A lot of that money just doesn't even go to the troops themselves. It goes to defense contractors and research and development. And our military is so large and so spread out that when you get to the level of the individual soldier, sailor, service member, there's not a lot of money to invest in them personally, especially when you're looking at equipment or healthcare, things like that, So we've gotten used to this conversation where, if we don't spend all this money on the military, we're not supporting our troops. And truthfully, I just think that money could be used more wisely to invest in our troops, especially when they get out, so that they don't have to face these battles alone.
You know what? You said something there that made me waver.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know you know the pushback that you were expecting. And
Absolutely.
You're right. You're 100% right. Esprit de corps, how could you say we need to cut back on defense spending?
Right.
There's a lack of accountability and transparency that's happening.
Absolutely.
It's being hidden under documents of paperwork that are being submitted to Congress and the Senate for approval. And defense spending, realistically, we're what? How many times over the next country?
The next 13 countries combined,
Yeah.
we spend more than them.
Yeah, it was the next
It's a lot.
13 combined, exactly.
Especially because departments within the military, right? How many times have you heard use or lose, right?
Oh
the
my
end of
God.
Exactly.
the end of the fiscal year
Oh
is
my
coming.
God.
If you don't use the rest of your budget, you risk budget cuts, and now your unit's buying a whole bunch of BS that they didn't have before and needed.
Well, and the worst part about it is we're spending this money, and the common phrase in the military, made by the lowest bidder.
Right.
You're not getting quality equipment. You're getting, it's tested, but it's not the best piece of equipment you can have based upon the amount of money that's spent.
As a person who has to make decisions for a company level, and I assist in making some decisions for a battalion staff, one of the most frustrating statements that I hear when I'm making a training plan or when I'm doing a maintenance plan is, there's just no funding for that. And what do you mean there's no funding for that? Like, we got money for this thing over here. Yeah, well, there was funding for that. Well, where did that money go? Well, that's a different pot of money. How do I get into that pot of money? I mean, you can't touch that pot of money. Why can't I touch that pot of money? Because it's for this thing. Well, okay, well, let's do that thing. No, can't do that. Why? Because there's no money for that. I can't describe the level of frustration being in the Army Reserves and wanting to make my unit the best possible unit in our region, in our theater, and time after time, well, we just have to wait because there's no money for that.
One of the things that frustrated me and that frustrates me now looking back at how much I was making in the military, and you're not making a lot of money. And going back to what you said, it's like all this money that the US government has, why don't we spend more on just the paychecks of the members?
Trans people should be allowed in the military.
I'll be honest, I didn't expect this.
Really?
Yeah, me either.
Honestly?
Why?
Why didn't
Why?
you expect it?
Especially when I was in, there's a lot of concern with the readiness aspect of it, being able to support soldiers that are transitioning, things like that.
Right.
The reason why I came to the middle is because as long as they meet the standard and that it doesn't affect readiness, I see absolutely no problem with it, because the Department of Defense has done this before, where they've barred gay people, women from certain things, and those same questions were brought up, and now they're integrated into the force.
One of my cycles in basic training, we did what we call icebreakers. It's the first time that the soldiers actually interact with the drill sergeants where we are not yelling at them. One of the soldiers stood up, introduced at that time himself, and said, "I am so-and-so. I have joined because I want to get my money for college so that I can go to fashion design because I really want to be on RuPaul's Drag Race." And I said, "All right, hey, live your truth, kid. I don't have a problem with that at all, And that at that time, male soldier came to me later and said, "Drill sergeant, I don't know how to express this because I've heard some things." That some tweets went out from a particular guy who was in charge at the time who said, "We're not going to allow transgendered soldiers in the military." And they said, hey, I'm transgendered. And I said, listen, what's stopping you from serving? What's stopping you? They went to their chain of command, and the chain of command said, well, I mean, you do your job, and you do it as well or better than anybody else here, so it doesn't affect force readiness, so start the process. She is now serving in Germany in the Army, and there has been absolutely no force multiplier loss at all. If the person has joined the military for the purpose of serving the military, I can't see myself saying you should not be allowed to serve. As long as we're in the uniform, we all have to put the uniform first. And if they're willing to put the uniform first and they want to serve honorably, then hell yes. Right. Who am I to say no?
When I was a counselor, a peer counselor at a vet center, and I put together this group, and I had a guy who was a Navy corpsman. The guy was extremely gay, I mean verbally, visibly gay. And he wanted a place in the group. And I said, okay. And then I called other buddies of mine, friends of mine, about this gay guy wants to be in a group. But none of them had an answer. And I went to the one guy I knew, a guy named Kerry Murback from Las Vegas. And he says, Culmer, he says, what's the problem? And after I thought about it, I was the problem. Right. And I didn't have any particular negative feelings, but I kept going around to try to find somebody to help me make a decision. And there was nobody available because there was no decision to be made.
I know that one of the biggest questions that is the question of should transgendered persons serve in the military comes up quite a bit. The common answers that we receive from the pushback is, well, where do we house them? What barracks do they stay in? The male barracks or the female barracks?
Yeah,
the words they try and put in our mouths, and by they I mean individuals who have not served or individuals who are the empty cans that rattle so loudly even if they're serving, it's because they refuse to look at people at an individual level and what they're doing and who they are. Don't come to me and tell me that we can't have trans soldiers serving because taxpayer money. I don't come to where you work and tell you how to mow a lawn. Yeah. All right?
Case closed. Yeah.
I would encourage my children to enlist.
Why?
Honestly, free education, truth. I am forever grateful for the post 9/11 GI Bill. I became a very different person because of education. And I can't imagine being thousands and thousands of dollars in debt right now, having to pay that back.
Adding to what you're saying, I would qualify the statement of I would encourage my children by saying the encouragement is there. It's not a forced, hey, you better join. Like, it's not that. It's if you don't know what the next steps are, if you don't have a plan, and most people don't, they don't know what comes after high school. Why don't you go someplace where they already have a plan and you can just fit into the plan for a little bit?
I want to ask about your children. Would you tell them when they became eligible to enter the military, would you tell them about, assuming educational benefits are the same at that time, would you encourage them as a result of the benefits that they could be entitled to? And if so, suppose 20 minutes later a war starts and they have to go to war. How do they deal with that after hearing from you, their dad, the benefits?
Right, yeah.
You know, realistically, I mean, I've got a daughter who's going to be turning 11 and a son that just turned 6. Okay, and you know, just to openly share, I'm recently widowed. You know, so thinking about the build out and what that looks like for children, you know, now being a single parent and having to look at that, war is definitely something you think about, but at that stage in life, you're going to have a general idea of who your child is and what they're about.
I was in that situation in '99. I joined knowing that Kosovo was a thing that could happen to me. And then it wasn't Kosovo, and then it was Iraq. And the first thing my father said was, I know what you're about to go into, because he had been in Vietnam. The military gives us expensive knowledge. That's what we want the younger generation to have, our children to have. We want them to have the expensive knowledge. The problem with expensive knowledge is you you don't get the benefits of the knowledge until you've gone through the experience. And that experience can be expensive.
I'm going to pause and bring Mahadi in.
Oh yeah, you were back there. Look at this little guy.
Holy Christ,
still here.
yeah.
I heard him laugh.
I heard the chuckle.
Jesus Christ.
First of all, I'd like to say that I mostly agree with everything that you guys said, but, for example, like when we talk about college, right? College being outrageously expensive in this country. I think a more productive way to address that is, why is college in our country so expensive? I'm not sure if, as a parent, I would be comfortable with rolling the dice with my children. When it comes to mental health, physical health, injuries, things like that. I can provide my knowledge, my experience, those that I've met, veterans that I've met, but because you want what's best for your child, right? And so, yeah, I'm not entirely opposed to it, I guess is the answer you're looking
you talk
for.
about wanting the best for them, but what's
Right.
the actual feeling you have on it? How do you genuinely feel about it as an individual, not the parent wanting the best for their child? Is this something that you'd sit there and say, look, I get it, I support you, because I actually believe in it, or I'm going to support you because I'm your parent and I see the other side of it, and that kind of gives me that drawback of saying,
No,
hey,
because look, I benefited from the military greatly. Like I would not be sitting here the way I am today if it was not for the military. So I totally understand that aspect. But like I said, I just seen it go wrong too many times. Like young people coming back with shrapnel across their face, and their life is in the hands of the U.S. government, and I'm not entirely comfortable with just that aspect of it.
Hey, man, that's good. Good. Yeah, I like your idea.
Of course.
Welcome home.
Hey, okay, stay here, okay?
All right, yeah,
Welcome
good to meet
home.
you.